Comic Palooza is almost here. It's going down June 20th to the 22nd at the George R. Brown Convention Center. Comic Palooza is a must-do for me every summer. You have comic book fans, movie fans, wrestling fans, anime fans, and so many other fandoms, usually dressed up in their best costumes, all under one roof for Texas's biggest pop culture fest. And once you're inside, there is so much to do, like celebrity panels, interactive experiences, tons of exhibitors, and more. Check it all out and buy your tickets now at comicpalooza.com/CityCastHouston. Smashing those protein goals can be hard, but one way I start my day is with a high-protein breakfast featuring Jones Dairy Farm's chicken sausage. Jones Dairy Farm makes premium crafted meat products such as all-natural breakfast sausage, available in pork, chicken and turkey, and center-cut Canadian bacon. 100% of their products are made in the USA with materials sourced primarily from the Midwest. Jones Dairy Farm products are available at most grocery stores, including Costco, and you can find them in a store near you at jonesdairyfarm.com. Today on CityCast Houston, it's Friday, so we're breaking down the biggest news of the week. And stay tuned, because at the end of our conversation, I have a fun tip from today's sponsor, Comic Palooza. It's Friday, June 13th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. All right, I've got education advocate and attorney Monica Flores Richart and political commentator Rafael Lemaitre with me. And I want to start today with Texas under Trump, stories that show how our state and city are being impacted by this administration. And let's start with ICE raids, because beyond the massive protests in LA, here in Houston, we saw ICE agents in plain clothing arresting people leaving immigration court on South Gessner. What are y'all's thoughts on this? Monica, you kick it off.
This is just so outrageous. What's happening, and we're getting reports from around the country as well that this is happening, is that the government is dismissing cases like asylum cases and various other challenges to cases, and then they're turning around and arresting folks right there. So it's just such a perversion of the asylum process. It is just so horrific. I mean, there's photos out of San Antonio of a woman screaming for her child in the parking lot of these courts. I mean, it's not only heartbreaking, but what it does, I think, to the immigrant community and their relation to police and their relation to the courts cannot be overstated. I mean, immigrants are witnesses in criminal cases. They are, in courts for various reasons, and you're just scaring them away. And it is heartbreaking for the people who are looking for due process, which requires an actual process, an actual being in front of the judge and making your case. And by making these expedited cases, they are completely doing away with that process. And it is just horrific, horrific news, and just a terrible development.
I've got so many thoughts on this, but Rafael, let's get your thoughts, because I know all of us are feeling a certain way about this.
Yeah, all of this is being done under the premise of law and order, right? Securing our communities. But you have to remember, if you're doing these types of tactics, you're driving people back into the shadows. At the end of the day, you want people to show up to the courts. This is part of our process. As Monica said, the due process. I worked for a couple of years at U.S. Customs and Border Protection during the Obama administration. And, it's a great agency. They save a lot of lives. They do a lot of good. But if you talk to the rank and file folks that work at these locations, they know they have to build relationships with the community because they rely on them. They help find bad guys too. So it's really horrific, and it is disturbing.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things I want to point out. ICE has responded and said it's not uncommon for them to detain people at immigration court, but this typically hasn't been done, and it's a new strategy we're seeing around the country and around the state. As you mentioned, the horrific images and videos coming out of San Antonio, we saw it here in the city of Houston. So first, if they're not doing anything wrong, in the video for us, the one that we saw at South Gessner, why are the ICE agents wearing masks and covering up their faces? Why are you concealing your identity if nothing wrong is being done? Or if you feel like nothing wrong is being done? That was the first thing that stood out to me, was like, oh, okay. So you probably don't feel good about this, and you're covering up your face. Number two, all the points that y'all just made, this is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy for this administration, in that you want people to do things the right way, go to court, go through the process. And if it doesn't work out, then yes, then you figure out the next steps. But if they don't go to court, then you can say, oh, look, these immigrants, they don't even want to go to court because they're scared to.
Yeah.
So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it is so frustrating. It's so heartbreaking that there's no empathy either. A lot of comments on social media that I saw, it just showed no empathy, lack of humanity, and people are almost enjoying this from a certain side of the political spectrum.
Yeah, and you can't, just isolate it to, us versus them, these folks who are facing these processes. Because when you erode at the process and you do these types of tactics, it harms all of us and all our due process rights. We never think we'll need, to use the court system ourselves because, we'll never find ourselves into trouble until you are. And when you have law enforcement, even if it's just one or two federal law enforcement agencies doing it, it just becomes easier for a different type of federal law enforcement agency to start doing it too. So it's something that impacts all of us, not just undocumented people or people seeking asylum. And we have to remember it erodes the entire system.
It makes our communities less safe because you have Latino communities that are not going to be reporting crimes. And that makes everybody less safe. I used to investigate murders in DC between undergrad and law school, and we relied on under-resourced communities because a lot of times the people you're tracking can't be tracked by credit cards and can't be tracked by phones. They are tracked by the people in the communities, these networks. I mean, that is how crimes are solved. And you are just making our community less safe when you do things like this in this kind of ham-fisted way that is meant to enrage as opposed to actually doing things, actually catching actual criminals, which is what these people in immigration court have not been proven to be.
I do want to mention that in the upcoming weeks, we do have an episode planned with an immigration attorney here in the city of Houston. And I'm so curious to hear, what is happening now with some of his clients. Are they not willing to go through the process or whatnot? But that is something. So make sure you subscribe to CityCast Houston if you haven't already, and just be on the lookout for that episode. And now, because of what ICE has been doing, of course, we've seen the national headlines and videos and images coming out of LA with the protests, but there have been protests in Houston as well throughout the week. I've seen it on the 59 bridges and at Houston's ICE detention facility by FEL. They are an immigrant-led civil rights organization. We've talked to them before on the show, and there's more planned for today and another demonstration planned on Saturday as well at City Hall, and also in some suburbs as well. There's a big network of protests called the No Kings Protest, and it's part of a nationwide demonstration against President Trump. And Governor Abbott has already escalated things by calling in the Texas National Guard to help across multiple cities. And he even tweeted this. This is our governor. He says, quote, "Peaceful protesting is legal, but once you cross the line, you will be arrested, FAFO, which means around, find out." That's your governor, already escalating things. Rafael, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is the arsonist firefighter strategy that's being employed, by the Trump administration, which is, you kind of inflame tensions and you make threats and you make the community mad. And then when the community gets mad, you say, "I told you so." And then you crack down. I was talking to somebody yesterday about, the protests you just mentioned in the suburbs. And I said, is it better to have a bigger protest downtown or a bunch of, different protests all across the area? And the person made a good point, which is they said, you got to have protests in those areas too, because it shows that, this isn't just isolated to the big cities or the blue cities. It's also happening in areas that are what can be considered the suburbs. So it is scary. We also saw a letter from Congressman Wesley Hunt to Judge Lena Hidalgo and Mayor Whitmire, essentially kind of setting these same red lines that the governor was making. And it's a political strategy. It's not a public safety strategy.
Yeah, it really is political strategy. Monica, your thoughts on these protests, and then, of course, what our elected officials are saying.
Yeah, the incitement of police and military to mobilize against this is just really, really scary. I'm a Gen Xer, and we always remembered Kent State, what happened, the National Guard coming in and shooting protesters. And that was kind of always something that we thought of when we talked about the balance between safety and protesters. And it's just incredibly scary. And, in this effort to, this party that loves the Second Amendment, is trying to really pervert, the First Amendment, which is the ability to go out there and the ability to talk. And it's really painting people who oppose to this in a corner, because whatever happens this weekend, it can be painted as a loss. if people are afraid and don't show up, it's going to be seen as, oh, they don't care about the issue. But if they do show up, regardless of how peaceful it is, it can be made to seem, chaotic and mob-like, and, all the things we've seen throughout the years to make protests involving under-resourced communities look, very, very scary, and put your safety at risk, which is, always the justification for a stronger police. So it's just a crazy time. It is just an incredibly crazy time. It's a crazy week, and just very, very scary.
Yeah, let me just say, I think Mayor Whitmire made a good point actually this week, and he said that Houston, he kind of alluded to the point that Houston doesn't have a history of violent protest. And I've heard that from, a lot of other people too, that, we protest, we exercise our rights, but you don't see this, the type of stuff that that some extremists are doing in LA that happen traditionally here in Houston. And I think we should probably be expecting the same on Saturday.
And by the way, the protests in Houston are going to be on Saturday. There's also protests planned in Sugar Land, Conroe, Cypress, Katy, League City. So if you are out and about and want to send us some videos, then send it to us on Instagram at CityCastHouston. Or if you have thoughts on the protests, or if you have thoughts on what ICE is doing around the city, give us a call and leave a voicemail, 713-489-6972. You can also text us your thoughts as well. Do you feel that? It's the crystal clear waters of the Frio River flowing across your feet as the sun warms your back and the smell of wild sage breezes through from the hills of Garner State Park. That right there is the perfect Central Texas moment in Uvalde County. It's time to head west for a summer escape. Whether you're hiking under a painted Texas sky, floating around quiet river bends, or just breathing deep as you soak in the peace of the Texas Hill Country, this is a place to slow down, to play longer, and to laugh louder. Generations of Texans have found their peaceful escape in Uvalde County, and now it's your turn. Start planning your trip at visituvaldecounty.com. Uvalde County, escape to serenity. Follow the yellow brick road to the George Theater and let the adventure begin, because The Wizard of Oz, the musical, is playing live on stage at the George Theater from July 9th to August 10th. I can already hear myself singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow as I step into the land of Oz with Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion in this beloved classic. Here's the best part. They have sensory-friendly performances, closed caption performances, an all-ages performance on August 9th, and matinee and evening shows, as well as one double feature day where they'll screen the film. How cool is that? Do something special with your kids, friends, loved ones, or make it a solo date and check out The Wizard of Oz, the musical, at the George Theater. Tickets are going fast, so grab yours today at adplayers.org or call the box office at 713-526-2721. Okay, this next story for Texas under Trump. Rafael, when I saw this, I thought this was an Onion headline, like a satire headline. What is happening with FEMA?
Well, this week, Trump, from the Oval Office, reiterated his intention to eliminate FEMA altogether. And that comes on the heels of another announcement that I don't think a lot of people noticed, but that our own FEMA regional administrator, Tony Robinson, who I know and have known for years, is departing the agency as well. As is another man named Jeffrey Greenberg, who runs what's called the National Response Coordination Center in Washington, which is essentially FEMA's war room, the center where they do mission assignments and connect with all the states and monitor everything that's going on when they're activated during a disaster. So it's pretty shocking. We've known the brain drain has been happening at FEMA for a while, where these seasoned, non-political career staff have been slowly being forced out or left on their own. But now it's really hitting home. And I think this isn't, kind of a false alarm or something just to be concerned about. It's kind of an emergency situation when you have the longtime regional FEMA administrator deciding to depart, somebody who has relationships with everybody from the governor to local and county emergency managers. It's a scary thing to think about, as we enter hurricane season.
Yeah, and President Trump said that after this hurricane season, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, is done. And again, the regional leaders are already leaving as we get ready for hurricane season. And if you want to know what kind of hurricane season we're going to have, I've linked an episode with Matt Lanza that we did a few weeks back, so you can listen to that. But Monica, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I'm so baffled by this. I know President Trump is saying that this is more on the state level. Like, hey, if you can't handle a response to a natural disaster, you shouldn't be a governor. But come on, there's more to this. Like, this makes no sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have talked to a few people this past week, and we've been lamenting that we are so close to being hit by a hurricane in some unexpected way because we have depleted the weather service. So having unexpected things happen with regard to the weather, plus having little or no response from FEMA, which we've already seen in the tornadoes, I think, that happened in the Midwest. So, you know, along with the kind of more visible ways FEMA helps is something that we don't always think about, which is flood insurance. FEMA subsidizes and manages flood insurance, which insures hundreds of thousands of homes in the Houston area. After Harvey, they gave $9 billion of recovery in the area. And we are going to be dealing with the housing market. This is a little long-term thinking. What's going to happen to this housing market that's going to be facing increased mortgage rates, right? So what is this going to do to our housing market? A lot of these houses cannot be sold without flood insurance. So people are going to be forced into the private market, having to be paying very high premiums if FEMA's not going to be subsidizing this flood insurance. And you're going to be seeing a real strain on the housing market. And then that impacts taxes and being able to collect taxes. I mean, it's just one on top of the other. And our inability to plan in the future in this way and talk about these future developments that might potentially happen, because so much is happening at the moment and we're facing such dire consequences just at the moment, is just mind-boggling. It's just we are being hit over and over and over again by this administration. But that is something we need to think about, is kind of these long-term developments with regard to flood insurance, because that is closely affiliated with FEMA.
Yeah, can I just underscore something Monica said, which she's absolutely right. The National Flood Insurance Program, the reason it exists in the first place is because flooding is the most common and costly type of disaster to insure, and the private sector can't afford to insure it. They don't do it on their own because it's either too expensive for homeowners or it's not profitable for them. So this is just one example of something else that FEMA does that people aren't thinking about. And Project 2025 actually outlined their plans to, quote, privatize flood insurance. Well, we know that doesn't work. And what's going to happen is what Monica said. There's just going to be a series of disasters. Homes are going to get destroyed. And I guarantee you somebody's going to say, well, we need to subsidize flood insurance, or we need to establish another federal program. And who's going to pay for that? Again, the taxpayer. And there's other programs, too, that FEMA is involved with that people don't think about when they think about FEMA. There was an article about Mount Weather, which is the operations center that FEMA relies on when there's a nuclear war and government needs to, continue functioning. And without FEMA, I just can't imagine, the state of Alabama running a center like that for the entire country. I mean, if the states are really on their own, you have to think about we're all interconnected.
Yeah. And of course, Project 2025 is the paper and / things to accomplish if President Trump won the presidency, which he did. It was put out by the Heritage Foundation, and they outlined a lot of the things that are happening right now. But again, President Trump said that, oh, no, wait, I have nothing to do with this. But again, it was a conservative think tank that put out this paper. Anyways, I want to get back to the state level, right? That was a big thing. President Trump said that, hey, if the governor can't handle this, then he shouldn't be governor, or she shouldn't be governor. States don't have these resources, like these billions of dollars that it takes after a natural disaster, having the boots on the ground. You need the federal help. How is that even possible? Like, am I missing something here?
No, and the irony here is that if there was ever an agency that put states first that I've ever worked at, it's FEMA. FEMA's entire existence is predicated on if the capacity of a state is exceeded, that's when FEMA comes in. Because one thing that Trump is right about is that governors are the ones that run disasters, and that's just the way the entire system is designed to work. That's what you want because governors know their states best. They have relationships with local communities. And FEMA is really a backstop to them. But what governors can't do is when there is a major hurricane is then ask for that additional support from FEMA, whether it's search and rescue teams that FEMA funds and manages, whether it's something called public assistance, which is the billions of dollars a year that FEMA spends to rebuild police stations or bridges and roads or all of these things that the state doesn't have their own funding for necessarily, or big power plants for hospitals and institutions that the state doesn't have enough of. That's when FEMA comes in. And if you eliminate that backstop, I just don't know where that support's going to come from.
This is going to be something to watch out for, and this will happen after this hurricane season, which I'm shocked that President Trump knew because some of his leaders in his administration didn't even know that there was an Atlantic hurricane season. True story. Look it up. I'm not even making that one up. Monica, I want to get to one last story for Texas under Trump. What is happening right now with college tuition and undocumented students and DACA students as well?
Yeah, I'm a big education advocate, and as I know, a lot of people are. And this week, a federal judge struck down the Texas Dream Act, which since 2001 has allowed undocumented students who attend Texas high schools and live in the state for at least 3 years to pay in-state tuition. And this is big. So generally, the difference between in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition is about 3 to 4 times. So we're talking a really substantial amount of money. Now, I looked up some stats. About 1.5% of public college attendees in Texas are undocumented. So that is going to be a huge hit. Again, talking long term, we're talking about hits to income. We're talking about people that are going to need social services if they remain in poverty, all of this long-term thinking that we don't have the luxury most of the time right now to think about is going to be big. But also in the short term, you're talking about tuition that is going to these institutions who need every nickel and dime right now because, we have other things going on in the federal government. One of the iterations of the budget in DC had reducing the maximum Pell Grant by a quarter, which is another hit to institutions of education. So this is just another hit to not only Latinos, not only undocumented folks in Texas, but it's really going to hurt our public institutions as well, not only in terms of enrollment, but in terms of money. It's bad. I mean, it's bad. And we haven't even done the analysis on the long-term effects, but they're going to be there and it's going to hurt. It's just really going to hurt us.
Yeah. And by the way, that law was passed under Texas GOP Governor Rick Perry 20 years ago. And now, isn't it crazy that how much the party has changed? And it's just like crazy looking at this now.
It was introduced by Rick Noriega, I believe. It had bipartisan support in 2001 because people were able to sit down and work together and think about the long-term health of the state, which has now been completely eroded for these sound bites and all of this, anger and frustration, but it was bipartisan. And, thankfully, Rick Noriega, I know, is working behind the scenes to raise some money to challenges. This is going to see some court challenges along the way. So, hopefully there'll be a bit of a reprieve for us to really get the message out about long-term consequences and that sort of thing. And look at the long-term consequences when we get a chance to breathe. Which we don't have that much these days. But this is a big deal.
Yeah, and sadly, I think this is part of the politicization of education. I mean, it used to be, like Monica said, a bipartisan thing. Education is good. Not saying everybody needs to go to college. It's not for everybody. Trade schools are a great thing. Working with your hands is a great thing, but you can't just shut that door based on politics.
Yeah, shout out to Governor Rick Perry, by the way, a college-age Raheel did get the governor's grant. So shout out to him. I will always see
nice.
Rick Perry's name on my grants when it would come in. And, I was a green card holder. So I had the ability to go to college at the University of Texas and benefited from so many different things that were being done on the state level. So, I'll always be grateful. And it just breaks my heart that other students won't get that benefit because that cost difference is so big, as you laid out, Monica. So we'll see what happens here with the challenges and what ultimately is decided to this law because, the long-term consequences could be very, very dire. Ready to have some fun this summer? Well, downtown Houston is where you need to head because they're jam-packed with cool events every day. You know I love a good workout, and downtown Houston has so many free fitness classes. Plus, they have brand new dance classes at Market Square Park featuring merengue, bachata, and salsa. Just want to relax? How about some live music or their awesome movies under the stars? And you can't forget about their summer trivia nights at Trebley Park. There's something for everyone. So grab the kids, the dog, your date, or just yourself and enjoy your summer in Houston's original neighborhood. Here's one last tip. Blanket Bingo is back this month, but act fast because tickets do sell out. Find the full list of events at downtownhouston.org or text downtown to 56512 for all the fun at your fingertips. Downtown Houston. Get energized and revived.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Okay, I want to move on to this big news that we saw here in the city of Houston, and it was former Mayor Annise Parker officially announcing that she is running for Harris County Judge in 2026. Of course, that's a position that's held currently by Judge Lina Hidalgo. Anybody surprised by this? Rafael, we're going to go to you first. Please let all the listeners know your history with Judge Hidalgo as well.
Yeah, full disclosure, I used to work for Lina Hidalgo as her communications director for a few years. I also helped on her re-election campaign. Although I'm no longer associated with her office. But yeah, this is big political news. It's no surprise that there's a challenge. This happened last time she ran as well. But what is interesting is, Mayor Parker brings some credentials. She's former mayor. She's hired a very capable campaign manager. I watched her announcement. She was very poised. She talked about her concern with the Trump administration, her priorities for public safety, flooding. She talked about her concern for cuts for FEMA, as we just discussed. So, obviously she's going to be a formidable candidate, assuming Lina stays in the race. But she has also touched the 2/3 rails of Harris County Democratic politics. One of them is she's come out in support of the HISD takeover. She called HISD schools chaotic. So I don't think that will be well received by Democratic primary voters that she needs to win. And the other one, of course, is a very high profile endorsement of the former DA, Kim Ogg, who has become persona non grata in the Houston Democratic Party for obvious reasons. It'll be interesting to see what happens. The big wild card here is, does Lina run again? And that's something I don't know the answer to. I suspect she won't, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Monica, do you think this is going to be a cakewalk for former Mayor Parker? Because seems like, it's hers for the taking. Like, will we see a strong contender from the GOP as well? That's soon to be decided, I'm sure. But what do you think?
I think it's going to depend on whether or not Judge Hidalgo stays. That's going to be huge because, she has proven again and again against some incredible candidates that she is a formidable opponent. And I would be very afraid if both of them ran. They're splitting some important constituencies, LGBT and Latino, and it's just that would be a very interesting race. Now, if she doesn't, Mayor Parker's fundraising capability, her kind of network in the LGBT community nationwide, her ability and her demonstrated ability to fundraise for other candidates is big. So she is definitely going to be a formidable opponent. I think it's just going to depend on who else jumps in. But I agree with Rafael. The first thing that came into mind is her endorsement of Kim Og and how that's going to hurt her. I've seen a lot on social media, people talking about that. And it's going to, I think, also depend on what's going to be happening nationwide at the time. If there is this big blue wave that is really pushing people more left, I see her as a more centrist candidate, that has crossover appeal. So that might be an influence that year. So it depends, I think, a lot on what's going to happen nationally and how strong that wave is, how big that wave is, and who gets out to vote. But I think the most important thing is whether or not Judge Hidalgo decides to run.
Yeah, I think Lena, if she decides not to run, Annise has a very strong chance. But if she stays in, you would be very surprised. Lena has tremendous support, especially among the African American community and Democratic African American primary voters. You know, I've seen her walk into these rooms, and she's a total rock star. So it will be very tough for Annise, I think, if Lena stays in. Now, if Lena doesn't run, all bets are off. I've heard other names, I won't mention them here, that are considering running, but Annise is being smart and jumping in early.
Ooh, come on.
And starting her fundraising now.
Come on, Rafael, give me a name. Give me a hint. Come on. You got to give me something. You can't tease that and leave us all hanging. Come on. By the way, the primaries are going to be March 2026. So still got some time here to see who these hidden figures that Rafael won't tell us, because I want to know, this is going to be interesting.
I'll tell you off the air.
Get closer. Okay, one last story I want to talk about before we get to our moment of joy. 3 18-year-olds were arrested this week after getting caught trying to sneak into the Astrodome. And I don't know if y'all have seen this or not, but there's this account called Lurking Houston. And this account will just go into abandoned Houston buildings and film what the state of these buildings are. And it's really viral content. Well, these teens were inspired by this account, and they were like, hey, we want to sneak into the Astrodome. And they tried. Cops were called. They were arrested. First, do y'all want to sneak into the Astrodome? I want no part of that. No,
actually, yeah, I would love to go in the Astrodome, and I'm actually glad these kids are using it. Somebody's using the Astrodome, at least. You know what I mean?
Monica, you want to go to the Astrodome?
Absolutely not.
Hard pass.
I have no desire. I mean, the mold, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what's going on in there.
Well, it is a really important architectural monument, to be fair, but it is in total disrepair, and every year there's some new idea about what to do with it. My idea is that you can turn it into an archive of all the failed plans of what to do with the Astrodome. It's going to be a huge archive full of all these ideas.
You might need another Astrodome for that, because there have been many plans, it feels like.
Exactly.
By the way, Constable Alan Rosen, put out a statement saying sneaking into closed old historic buildings is dangerous. Oh, so the Astrodome is dangerous. Tear it down. There you go. I win. Our executive producer, Laura Isensee, is all about keeping up the Astrodome and making it something special. I'm like, just tear it down now. All right, the pictures will be there. It was historic at the time. We'll always love the Astrodome, but nothing is being done. Or at least now, if there's an interest of people going inside, why not offer some tours or something? Do something with it. Come on.
Make a little money.
That would be cool, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not make some money off of this?
Yeah.
So, man, those kids, hopefully they're not charged, although it looks like they will be charged and made an example out of so other people don't sneak into the Astrodome. But come on, let them go. They're just being silly 18-year-olds. It's all right. Nobody was getting hurt. And again, it's the Astrodome. Who cares? Get rid of it. That's my final thought. If you have thoughts on this one, again, you can leave us a voice message by calling 713-489-6972. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we should do with the Astrodome. All right, y'all, it's the end of the week. Let's end on a high note and celebrate some big things. What made you happy? Give me some good news here. Monica, start it off.
Well, looking at what's happening in LA, it's been a tough week, but I'll tell you what brings me genuine joy is looking on social media and looking on TikTok and see the way people have responded to what's happening in LA, what's happening with the ICE raids. It is absolutely incredible. And it gives me so much hope that people that aren't Latino, people, that aren't necessarily a close part of the Latino community even, are coming out in support and saying things. And I saw a Black creator on TikTok the other day that really touched me. She said, when you talk about human beings, when you talk about ICE, we all tend to say a lot about what Latinos have done for this community, right? What Latinos have done for America, how we are raising babies, we're cleaning kitchens, we are making the food, all the things we do. But this creator reminded me that it's not only what we contribute, just the fact that we're human beings, and that this hate label and this hate is being directed to us and to Latino communities is just so heartbreaking, and how important it is just to recognize our humanity in the middle of it, reminding us as well that we're more than our contribution, that just the fact of being human is worthy of the fight, is worthy of the advocacy. And I'm telling you, there have been lots of tears shed at Casa Reichart over here, but that gives me hope. That gives me true joy.
That's
And
beautiful.
it is wonderful to see.
That's awesome. That's really beautiful. Rafael, how about you?
Yeah, speaking of the Latino community, if you're like me, you're always, kind of looking for great places to have coffee with people, get out of the office, get that third place that's between home and the office where you could just meet up with friends. And there's this amazing new cafe called Las Perras Cafe in Ido, owned by two Latino women who have created this wonderful, it's like this welcoming, really cool vibe, lots of plants. There's an amazing food truck called Florimiel that serves Caribbean food. And, my family is from the Caribbean coast of Colombia. And, I tried their fried empanadas. They were phenomenal. They have mofongo from, Puerto Rico. So it's a great place if you're looking for a place to chill out. The other thing I'd point out is that they, when I was buying my latest coffee there, they also are giving out the Know Your Rights red cards that a lot of the immigrant rights groups are distributing for undocumented folks so that they can read through it in English or Spanish so that they know what their rights are if ICE comes knocking on their door. So, obviously not getting a commission from them, but it's a great place if you're looking for a place to work for the day or to visit or just try some new food that you haven't tried before. Las Perras Cafe.
That sounds wonderful right there. My moment of joy, it's Father's Day this weekend. So I just want to send some love to all the dads out there and father figures who are doing great things and, going out with the kids, going out with kids in their community and being there for them. I love it. So I'm excited for Father's Day and an early Father's Day to you as well, Rafael. So
thank you.
Have fun, celebrate, and shout out to all the dads and father figures. Okay, before we get out of here, I've got an insider's fun tip for Comic Palooza. It's almost here. It's going down June 20th to the 22nd at the George R. Brown Convention Center. And you've heard me talk about it throughout the month. So I want to give you an insider's tip to get you ready. So the schedule for the entire weekend is up, and I highly, highly recommend building your day around the celebrities you want to meet. So for example, if you really want to go meet Hayden Christensen and get a picture with Hayden Christensen because he was a great Anakin Skywalker, get your tickets for that opportunity and then plan your entire day around that. Maybe you want to go to a panel like my boys Comicast of Michael Carroll and John Lee. They're doing a great panel. You want to watch that one, then plan everything out. Don't go in there without a plan because there is so much happening. There's educational panels, interactive experiences, and so much more. So to start planning and get your tickets, go to comicpalooza.com/CityCastHouston, and I will see you there. It's going to be so much fun.
Raheel, it's at the Astrodome, right?
No. It's at the George R. Brown Convention Center.
Okay,
Please don't send
just
anybody
making
to
sure.
the Astrodome because they might get arrested. Rafael, Monica, thank y'all so much for joining us, and can't wait to have y'all back on. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
You too, Raheel.
That was education advocate and attorney Monica Flores Richart with political commentator Rafael Lemaitre. I've linked all of the stories we talked about in our show notes. Before we end the week, I just want to thank you for taking the time to share CityCast Houston with your friends and family. If you haven't shared an episode this week, please share this conversation with 3 of your friends who live in Houston so they can find out what's happening with FEMA. Also, drop us a rating and review wherever you're listening, and you can get more Houston news and happenings with our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, with the info in our show notes, or go to houston.citycast.fm. Thanks. That will do it for this week here on CityCast Houston. Our producers this week were Selena C.A. Reynolds and Carleon Jones. Our newsletter editor is Brooke Lewis. Our executive producer is Laura Isensee, and I'm your host, Raheel Ramzanali. Our music is by the band All the Kimonos, with additional music by Hip Color of EpidemicSound.com, plus Rob McAllister and Rosedale from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss our conversation on Monday about the new generator divide in Houston, who gets to keep the power on, and who's out of luck in hurricane season.